Okay, hello everyone. Thank you all for joining us for today's Why You Should Be Using Salesforce's Nonprofit Cloud and How to Get Started for Free. My name is Lauren Hogan and I'm a Regional Marketing Coordinator here at JMT. We're very excited to have founder and managing partner from Vin Technology, Scott Hollera, joining us today. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before I turn it over to Scott. If you have any questions during the webinar today, please go ahead and submit them into the Q&A section as you think of them. We'll save all of them until the end of the presentation, but don't hesitate to submit them as they come. Also, just a reminder that we'll send both some handouts and the recording of today's webinar within 24 hours after it has concluded. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Scott, to get us started.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So real quick, here's our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about my firm, Vin Technology. And then from there, we'll really get into the meat of it, the reason that you're here, and that is to learn a little bit more about Salesforce, why you might choose Salesforce, and then just to kind of help wrap your head around some of the concepts, we'll do a little demo and close out with Q&A. So my name again is Scott Hollera. I am the founder and managing partner of Vin Technology. We are headquartered just outside of Dallas, Texas. And last year, we opened our Washington, D.C. office to have a little bit more of a local footprint for our nonprofit clients there in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. As an aside, I will tell you that signing a lease on an office building March 11th of 2020 was not the greatest date to do that. No less, our team up there is rocking and rolling and providing great care for our clients up in that area. So then we have something we call our brand promise. And that is we create systems that free people to focus on what they're best at. And my guess is, particularly for those of you that are in finances, you spend a lot of time exporting data out of here and massaging it here and then importing it here and praying and crossing your fingers and hoping that it all works. And that's really not what you were hired to do. You were hired for a skill set to bring greater value than that. And in our firm, that's what we want to help you get back to is doing those things that you're best at. And we as an organization are so passionate about this sort of thing that we actually wrote a song and recorded a music video. If you go out to YouTube after this, search for Vin Technology, find our channel, and we think you'll get a laugh out of our hit song, Integrate, Automate, Be Free. Be sure to check that out later. So then we have two practices or two focus areas within our firm. The first is our systems integration practice. And really that centers not only around Salesforce, but also Sage Intacct. And for those of you that have had perhaps long-standing relationships with JMT, you're probably thinking, hey, wait a second, I thought JMT did Intacct. Why is this Vin company talking about Intacct? Let me clarify really quick. We actually have a very different role in the Intacct ecosystem than JMT does. JMT is there to help you set up your Intacct system from the ground up. They're there to help you get your data from your legacy accounting system, train you how to use it, and help you with that ongoing support. We don't do any of that. Our role in this ecosystem is to provide additional products and services to help you get more value out of Intacct. And oftentimes that happens in the form of building integrations across systems like Salesforce to Intacct. But really we get calls every day from people saying, hey, we have this app. Can you help us integrate this? Can you help us automate that? And the answer is almost always yes. The other part of our business is what we're here to talk about today, and that is our Salesforce.com consulting practice. And so with Salesforce, we provide a pretty wide range of services here, starting with helping organizations implement Salesforce for the first time. Maybe you're on razor's edge and you're frustrated with it and you want to get into something more modern. Or maybe you're operating on spreadsheets and sticky notes and you need something more robust. We can help you make that move into Salesforce for the first time. I think there was one group that was already using Salesforce. And one of the things, if you've ever been around a CRM environment, that you probably know all too well is that these are kind of living, breathing systems that need to be kept up with. And as processes change, we need to adapt the system to do that for us. So we can come in and help optimize that existing Salesforce environment as well. For some organizations, it doesn't make sense for them to hire a full-time system admin. And so we actually can fill that role. And then obviously, I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of that integration work. There are many, many, many facets of the Salesforce technology stack. And that is a long and exhausting list. We can't fit it all into one slide. You'll see there on the right a little bit more about what we do within the Salesforce platform. The other thing I want to call on the slide is that kind of wide U shape down there with all these different icons. Salesforce is very big on certification, and we as a Salesforce partner carry many, many certifications within the organization. So our people have done lots and lots of work for many years on the Salesforce platform, and everybody on the team has one or more Salesforce certifications. And you'll see that little red line going toward one of them. And this is one that I am particularly proud of. A few years ago, Salesforce rolled out their very first nonprofit cloud certification. And one of our team members was actually one of the very first people in the world to achieve that. And so again, very, very proud of that. A couple more things about Venn, and then we'll get into to what you came here to hear more about, and that is Salesforce. So then we, just part of our ethos, kind of our core tenets that we operate around, are that we really look at code as a last resort. Wherever possible, we want to configure systems, not code systems. And one of the reasons that I got really drawn into the Salesforce ecosystem many, many years ago is that I'm a pretty technical guy, but I can't write a line of code to save my life. And for somebody who thinks very logically and has a general understanding and appreciation for technology, I was able to get in and build some really cool stuff without having to actually be a developer. And so we again really look at code as a last resort. And the other thing is we look at the big picture. So oftentimes organizations come to us and they say, hey, Scott, can Venn help us solve this problem? And as we dig into it, we ask a lot more questions. And what we usually find is, yes, the problem that they're talking about certainly needs to be solved, but there are things that happen before and there are things that happen after that need to be taken into account as well. Very common scenario and very applicable to our audience today is we're contacted all the time by nonprofits who need to integrate their donations from a system like Salesforce into Sage Intacct. And so the conversation really goes, Scott, can you help us integrate Salesforce and Intacct for our donor management system, or to get our donations into the accounting system? And the answer is yes, absolutely, we can do that. It happens all the time. But we need to take a step back. Most likely, your organization uses some sort of online fundraising tool. Or maybe in a pre-COVID world, maybe you put on a 5K and an annual gala and the golf tournament. And you had event registrations that also had a financial tie-in that needed to make it into both the CRM and the accounting system. Well, when you come to us and say, hey, can you integrate our donor management and our accounting? We absolutely can. But we've also got to factor in those upstream systems and processes as well. So again, we like to get all the puzzle pieces out and look at the big picture before we start anything. All right, enough about us. Let's talk about Salesforce.com. So Salesforce was founded in the late 90s. They were one of the few that escaped the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s. And it is today one of the most widely recognized and one of the largest cloud platforms in the entire world. And in my opinion, Salesforce is largely responsible for getting the cloud concept into the mainstream and making cloud a concept that people were very comfortable with. I don't think that we would be where we are today with a lot of these cloud technologies had Salesforce not been one of those pioneers very early on. While Salesforce is a for-profit company, and if you go out and look at their stock price, you'll go, oh, yeah, they definitely are. While they are a for-profit company, Salesforce is also very philanthropic, and they've really had that as part of their ethos since the very beginning. And years and years and years ago, the founder of Salesforce came up with something that he calls the 1-1-1 model, where they give 1% of their product, we'll talk more about that in a minute, 1% of their people, and 1% of their resources. And over the last, 20 some odd years, they have given over $1.3 billion in the form of technology grants. The other cool thing that they do is they actually allow their employees to take a week a year of paid company time to go out into the world and do volunteer projects. And then finally, in some cases, they do provide cash grants for different things. So again, Salesforce is a for-profit, but they have a very philanthropic aspect to their overall mission. Let's talk about that 1% of technology. Any 501c3 or higher ed institution is eligible to get a license grant from Salesforce, where they will give you 10 free licenses of the core CRM application. And one of the questions that I almost always get asked is, hey, Scott, we only have 8 people today, 10 free licenses sounds great, but what happens when we grow and we add a couple more people, or we bring in some volunteers and we need them to do work in the system? What do we do then? Well, Salesforce provides extremely deep discounts to nonprofits when you need additional CRM licenses, or when you start looking at other products. Maybe their marketing automation tools might be important for you at some point, or their communities product. We would have called that a portal years ago. They offer these deep discounts. And just as kind of a point of reference, as a for-profit, the list price for my Salesforce license at Venn Technology is $150 per user per month. Nonprofits pay $36 per user per month for that very same thing. So again, very, very generous and deep discounts when we get past that first 10. And then if you decided to go down this path, they also offer something called the Nonprofit Success Pack at no additional cost. This Nonprofit Success Pack is a free tool that gets installed into your Salesforce environment that gives you a lot more nonprofit specific functionality. And we'll get a look at some of that here in just a few minutes. All right, Scott, free sounds great, but you know what? There are so many tools out there. If we were to make an exhaustive list of all of the nonprofit tools out there, we couldn't fit them on 100 slides. There are tons of them. There's new ones popping up every day. So why Salesforce in this very crowded field? I like to talk about something I call the smartphone analogy. So this is a little bit less applicable today, but not too long ago, if you went into the AT&T or Verizon store and you were looking for a new phone, and back in the day when we had Windows Phone and BlackBerry, and then of course we had the stalwarts that are still with us today of our iPhones and our Android devices. If you were standing in the store and you're comparing between these two, my guess is you probably wouldn't think much about the BlackBerry or the Windows Phone. You would really gravitate toward the iPhone or the Android device. And a big part of that draw is these ecosystems that they have built up for themselves. So you've got the App Store for your iPhone or Google Play for your Android, and you can go out and download hundreds of thousands, if not millions of different apps that extend and enhance the value of your smartphone. And Salesforce is very much the same way. Salesforce actually kind of pioneered this concept. They call it the App Exchange. It's like the App Store, but for your CRM. Quick little tidbit, quick little trivia for you. Back in the early 2000s, when Steve Jobs was still alive, he and Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, were good friends. And Mark and Steve were talking, and Mark kind of said, hey, I think you should come out with this App Store thing. And years later, he actually bought the domain appstore.com and gifted it to Steve Jobs and Apple. So Salesforce kind of played a role in this, and you see it reflected in their product as well. The last time I got a hard number, there were over 3,400 apps out on the App Exchange that allow you to do all kinds of things. So really common ones we see are online giving, event registration. We've already talked about those a little bit. But maybe you have a large volunteer team and you need a way to better manage them. Maybe you need that email marketing. Maybe the list just goes on and on and on. Chances are, if there's something you need, there's an app for that to borrow from that old ad campaign. And then from a cost standpoint, many applications out there on the App Exchange are free. And of those that are paid, oftentimes nonprofits are offering pretty substantial discounts on those third-party add-ons. So kind of furthering this concept of why Salesforce, and the thing that really powers that App Exchange is this underlying platform. So Salesforce is not just an application. And when I say application, I'm talking about pre-built software that does something. Salesforce is this very rich, very robust underlying platform that allows us to build not just custom fields, but custom objects. Years ago, we would have called them custom tables in a database, so that we can track all kinds of additional information. There are process automation tools that will allow us to do approval workflows, or, hey, when this happens, send this person an email, or when that happens, update this field. Their API or application programming interface allows for the ability for Salesforce to talk to and exchange data with any system out there. And the list of platform capabilities just goes on and on and on, and we won't exacerbate that further. But this platform is incredibly powerful. So I think the best way to demonstrate the power of the platform is to talk about some use cases. And before we go there, I think it's worth noting, in my estimation, 80% or more of nonprofits that use Salesforce start off with a donor management use case, but it can be expanded to do so much more than that. We work with a very large church here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that uses Salesforce, believe it or not to track money coming in the door, but money going out the door. This is a church that has significant resources, and one of the things I just love about working with them is that they're very generous with it. They have a massive network of partners around the world, and these partners are asking them for help. And so we built a system in Salesforce where the staff at this church can actually submit a funding request in Salesforce. And then once a quarter, the organization reviews all of those requests. They have this big meeting, and they can track, did they partially approve, fully approve, or reject the funding request? And for those that get approved, we give them a single place to go to get all the information they need about that relationship. So we can see who have we been talking to? Are they coming to our conferences and events and trainings? And then things like, hey, do we have all of our ducks in a row with our documentation? We track tax documents and so forth. So again, Salesforce can be used for so much more than donor management. One more for you. We've got another organization that I would say they're an international education group. And they do use Salesforce to record money coming into the organization and who's giving and so forth. But this group uses it to work in their operations as well. So they put on thousands of classes around the globe each week. And within Salesforce, we track what geographies are they working in, what countries are they in, what languages have they converted their content into, what content still needs to be translated into some language. And then when we actually get down to the execution level, who are the people that are leading these classes? And most importantly, what are the outcomes that we're seeing with the classes that they're putting on? And when you can marry that financial information, the giving information with that outcome, that's a really powerful story to be able to go back and tell to your major donors and to your board. All right, enough slides. Let's hop out and take a look at the system. Can I get a quick check just to make sure that I'm still sharing my Salesforce screen? We should see a bunch of charts and graphs.
Yeah, looks good.
Awesome, very good. All right, so we are looking at Salesforce.com. And for the folks out there that are using it already, my screen may look very different from your screen, and that's okay. Again, that just further illustrates the power and flexibility of the tool. So when we log in, we're taken to this home screen, and we've got the ability to put all kinds of stuff on this. And one of the common things that we do is we'll put this dashboard here. And it's a great place to start your day. When you first log in, you get hit with this pertinent information right off the bat. And by the way, this is a demo environment, so you'll see a lot of gaps in data. It's really here more just for illustrative purposes. But again, we're putting this great information right in front of you. As we scroll down the page, we've got the ability to hook in with our calendar. And as you can see here, on my calendar was this webinar presentation that we're doing with JMT. And then over here, if I had some tasks, meaning like I need to follow up with somebody, we've got the ability to do that. We can also task other people. So if you need to have other people working on things, you can keep track of who needs to do what right here in Salesforce. There's a lot of other nooks and crannies, but I think we'll for the sake of time, keep cruising here. Excuse me 1 second. All right, I'm back. Coming back up here to the top of the page, we have this search bar, and this is a Google-like search tool. We can put in any keyword, and Salesforce is going to return any record in the system that might be relevant. As we come down here, we'll see all of these different tabs across the top. These tabs represent different functional areas within the system, and we're not going to hit them all, but I do want to touch on some of the more important ones. So the first stop on our tour is the account. So accounts, I like to say that they represent logical groupings of people and things. An account might be an organization like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but an organization might also be a household. So for example, if my wife and I were a donor, you might have the Hallra household, and within that household, you would see Scott Hallra and Elise Hallra, and they'd be grouped together there under that. For today, we're going to drill into this Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation account. And when we pop to this details tab, we get all kinds of information specific to this organization. And one of the things that I just love, and this is something that Nonprofit Success Pack enables for us, is the ability to get some donor intelligence. So when did we first start receiving gifts from them? How recently have we received? What's our average? What's our highest, lowest, and so forth? Really powerful information. For those of you on the call who might be membership organizations, we can track membership levels. When did people join? Are they in good standing? And so forth. So lots of information. And then of course, because of that underlying platform, we can customize this to our needs. Over here, we'll hop into this related tab, and as we scroll down, we can see that we have a contact here, and we might have dozens of contacts. But here we've got Gary Grantmaker, and if we drill into there, we can see his phone number, his email address, his mailing address, and so forth. And then as we come further down the page, we see this thing that we call an opportunity. And so here, this opportunity represents a grant. So we applied for this grant with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And maybe for those of you that are largely grant funded, maybe you're applying for dozens of grants in the course of a year, and you need a way to track, okay, what have we applied for? What have we won? What have we lost? For the ones that are open, where do we stand? Do we owe them any information? So here, Salesforce is tracking all of that for us. And then we have the ability, I mentioned earlier that we do a lot of work tying into accounting systems. We have the ability within the system to record the appropriate financial coding for this, so that when we hand it off to accounting, they know exactly how it needs to be coded in the system. Here, in the case of a grant, we might not need to track just the fact that we have a grant, but what payments have we received for that grant? Or for an organization that deals with pledges, the same thing would apply here. And then also in the grant space, generally speaking, when you win a grant, you've got responsibilities to provide reports on a periodic basis. Excuse me, to show how you're using the money and what progress you're making. These are things that Salesforce can deliver for you. We could go on and on and on. The other thing that I did want to touch on is just an example of kind of that more operational type thing. We talked about the ability to use Salesforce to manage funds that are leaving the organization. We talked about that story with a group that is providing education around the globe. One more thing just to kind of get you thinking about, we had a camp that came to us years ago, and they said, hey, the donor stuff is great, we want to do that, but you know what, we have maintenance that we have to do around our property, and we really need a way to track these maintenance items. And so here, we created something that we're calling a case. And in this example, we've got a broken window in cabin 1. And we can see when this was created and how long it's been open and what's the status. So maybe there's some things that we can do internally ourselves, and maybe there's some things that we need to refer out to somebody else. And for the things that we refer out to somebody else, maybe we need to track a list of approved service providers. So there is just a lot that we can do with the Salesforce platform, and I really hope that this has kind of got you thinking about different ways you might be able to use a tool like this. I'm going to flip back to our presentation here. So if you saw this and you are thinking, oh my gosh, this is great, how do we get going? If you go out to salesforce.org/get-started, you can fill out the application and get underway in terms of getting that license grant. And if your organization is comfortable rolling this out by yourself, wonderful. There are tons and tons of tools online that can help you get started. But if you need somebody to actually kind of guide you through the process and help you get there, we would love to be a part of that journey. And my contact information is there on the screen. And with that, I guess, should we open it up for questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott. Don't forget that you can submit your questions through the Q&A at the bottom. It does look like we have a couple here, though. So you say that there are 10 free licenses. What's the catch? What limitations does it have?
If it's free, there's got to be a catch, right? So really, there is no catch. Limitations, I mean, certainly with any application, there are limitations. There are limitations on the overall amount of data that you can store, but that limit is huge. You can store millions upon millions of records. There's some limits in how many times you can call the API in a day. But really, we rarely see organizations hitting those kinds of limits. Good question.
Yeah, and our next one is, what happens if I need more than 10 licenses?
So we touched on that earlier. Salesforce, they make it really easy and they make it very cost effective. So when you hit license number 11 or 12 or whatever you need, they're going to offer you those licenses at an extreme discount. We as a for-profit have a list price for those licenses of $150 per user per month. Whereas in the nonprofit world, they charge it $36 for that same thing. So you're not stuck when you get to that 10. They give you the ability to keep growing with them.
Okay, and then our last question that we have here is, we're looking at new systems and are considering Raiser's Edge in XT. Why is Salesforce better?
That's a great question. So Raiser's Edge has been around for a long time. And you can go out and do all kinds of research on the history and kind of, their history in terms of providing updates and enhancements to the platform. I would really kind of lean back on that smartphone analogy that I gave earlier. And while I do think they have made some progress in terms of developing a better third-party ecosystem, they don't have anywhere near the breadth that Salesforce does. And the other thing that I would say is that you're still really kind of locked into that tool being just a donor management system. And so if any of those operational use cases got you thinking, wow, I think we could do something with this, you're just not going to get that same kind of functionality in a tool like Raiser's Edge. They've been around a long time, and for a long time they were the gold standard. But I do think that Salesforce really has a leg up when we look at the overall platform and not just the donor piece. Good question, fair question. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we had another one come through. Are there any initial fees for the platform, or is it just the monthly license fee?
So if you have less than 10 users, you could potentially have zero cost whatsoever. If you need help implementing it, then there would certainly be fees to whoever you worked with. We'd love to help you. There would be fees paid to the consultant that sets it up for you and migrates your data and does the training. But in terms of what you pay to Salesforce, if you don't need more than 10 licenses and you don't need other products or functionality, you could actually use this at no cost.
Okay, great. Looks like that's all the questions that we had come through. So thank you so much, Scott. And thank you everyone for joining us and Vin today to learn more about how you can take advantage of your Salesforce for your nonprofit. As a reminder, JMT Consulting works closely with organizations like Vin Technology to implement, integrate, and support best-in-class financial management and back office productivity solutions. To learn more about how we can help you create better outcomes for the communities you serve through optimized technology, book a free consultation today at jmtconsulting.com/book. And it looks like we will send the recording as well as the slides out after 24 hours after this has concluded. And with that, we'll go ahead and conclude the webinar. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you again, Scott.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Have a nice day. Bye.